Welcome to the Essentially You podcast. Dr. Karyn Shanks, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks so
Great.
much for
Great.
asking.
Yeah.
We are talking about how the stories that we hold on to, especially our health stories, really become a roadblock in creating true health. And I love that we're having this conversation. This is not a conversation that I've had most specifically here on the show. It's been addressed a couple of times, but not to the extent of which we're going to dive into it today. What I want to first do before we kind of start to unpack the layers of this is I would love to hear a little bit about how this work came to be, how you figured that out. Like, what was that aha moment for you where like, this is keeping people from their highest healing potential?
Well, I think that I've had many aha moments, and both in working with clients and working on myself and my own healing, and realizing that so often the obstacles for me had to do with, oh, I can't seem to make myself a priority in my life. I can't seem to give myself permission to, create the space that I need for my own healing and put myself first once in a while. And I had to reckon with that in order to heal from my own issues. I have had my own health issues over the years, but certainly with clients, creating those savvy healing plans that seemed perfect and addressed their biochemical imbalances, and the client wants those strategies, but then, they just can't seem to make them work. So what stands in the way? And oftentimes it's especially with women, not making themselves a priority, or not feeling that they have a strong sense of personal power or agency over their own healing, how to choose the path, what works for them and what doesn't, because there's so much dogma out there about the right way to heal, the right way to go about healing in every camp, in conventional medicine and functional medicine. People just, I think have become disenfranchised from their own healing and their own wisdom. And that's all about the stories that we've learned and that we tell ourselves, and they get in the way of us finding the path that's best for us. We each have our own path.
Oh, we absolutely do. What I love so much about what you were saying, I have people reach out to us every single day. I'm sure you and so many of us as practitioners, and they're looking for that right supplement, and they're looking for the right testing, and they're diving into those root causes of functional medicine, which I think is so incredible. But what we're talking about here is an intangible. It's
Right.
not like we can measure this. We can't put this on a lab, but it's the intangible that I think we are missing.
That's right.
So often I love, one of my favorite books was by Candace Perth, which is Molecules of Emotion. And, and that, it can be, although we're getting more clear on how to measure something like that, but there's a lot of intangible there. And when we're holding on to, again, a lack of worthiness, maybe this is my fault, I'm chained to this particular condition, I'm never going to get well. We're not able to move forward in that journey. When it comes to, listening particularly to women, this is a women's hormone podcast, and so my focus is a lot on women. What are some common stories that can get in the way of us healing a chronic condition or healing chronic fatigue or a hormonal imbalance that we're just not even seeing, that we are getting caught up in?
Right. And that's a really good point. The last thing you say, we get caught up in it, we don't see it. And that's the issue. That I think that's one of the tricky things about the stories we tell ourselves. Because essentially it's what we think, what we believe, we don't. It's like we sometimes lack the ability to step back as an observer and see that what we think and believe is a story we've adapted. There is no ultimate, absolute, definable truth, because we're filtering everything through our consciousness and through our perceptions as they are at any given time. It's like as children, we take in the world around us and we don't have the capacity to make sense of it. So we create a lot of stories, right? To explain what's going on. And, as adults, we look back at that and those stories don't make sense that they did at the time. So it's a very subjective, tricky thing. But the book, I talk about 5 stories that that I've observed in, at least in my population of clients, that seem to come up again and again and again. And these are types of stories that have come up for me. And one has to do with power and a sense of agency and personal authority. We tend to hand ourselves over to the experts, the medical experts who know everything. And that's, that's sort of an attitude that's propagated by the institution of medicine, and any institution that's filled with experts who, it can often make us feel like we don't know what's best for us,
right.
but
They know
they
better.
do.
Yes,
That
they
know
always
better.
know better. Yes.
Right. So that's a story. That's 100% a story. And we've got to, we have to upend that story, right? And reclaim our power and our personal agency. The other one is about worthiness. Am I worthy of my time to buy healthy food and prepare special diets and go to the gym, go to yoga class? I get a babysitter for my children when I go and do what it is that I need, or go to bed early instead of doing the laundry. These are the kinds of things I hear from my clients is I can't take care of myself because I get home from my 8 hours at work and pick up the kids, and I've got to fix the dinner, and I've got to do the laundry and blah, blah, they don't factor themselves in. That's a worthiness story.
I want to just take a moment. And I've shared this on the show before.
Yeah.
I had very severe chronic fatigue when I was 30 years old, and I was doing all the things I thought. I was taking care of the nutrients. I was drinking my green smoothies. I was even doing yoga. I was like checking the boxes in terms of, okay, what does one need to do? But I kept falling back on the ground. I kept getting back to square one, and I just couldn't figure out what I was doing. And ultimately it was this defining, limiting belief that I was brought up by my family, especially the women in my family, that it was selfish to focus on me. I always need to put other people first. And so I just kept finding myself in this spiral over and over and over again, until I finally had this moment where I realized, oh my gosh, I'm locked into this belief that was literally drilled into me for as early as I can remember.
Absolutely. And those are huge, those cultural stories that are passed. They're in our culture, they're in our family, they're so pervasive, they're so tenacious, they're hard to see. So that it's fantastic that you were able to recognize that. And I imagine you still bump up against it from time to time too.
And I think that's something to also acknowledge, is that it's important to kind of look at that and say, okay, I see you, you're not serving me. And I'm going to push you to the wayside. But if I'm not mindful and I'm not always just kind of reminding myself, you can so easy fall back, because my family hasn't changed their belief around that.
That's right.
And so anytime I'm around them, that's that is the undercurrent.
That's
and
right.
So it's not like it hasn't gone away, but my really being diligent around that, letting that belief go and creating a new belief, a new story.
Yes, that's right.
But you're right. It's always just kind of like, over there. And I think that's something to really acknowledge, is that even if we address it and we decide that it's not the story that's serving us, it's not like it's probably going to potentially pop back up a couple of times in our life.
They've created these deep grooves through our minds, deep mind pathways. And, our work is to be aware, become the observer, and then develop new grooves, new deep mind pathways, right? And over time, this shift in that balance occurs. So we can live that new story more fully. But you're right, especially when we're tired, and the path of least resistance is just to go down those old pathways, And what you said about your family brings up what I write about in my book as the third story, and that is about belonging. Because we share so many lifestyle habits and characteristics with our tribes and with our people and our communities, and to step out of that to do something different that we think we need is a very threatening, scary thing to do. Even if you just decide to eat differently, so you're no longer going to eat the same things everyone else does at Thanksgiving, or you're not going to eat the same thing that everybody loves at supper time. I mean, it's very hard. It's really hard.
It is. I've transformed a lot of my family over the years. And there was a holiday, Thanksgiving, I want to say 3 years ago, where my mom let my husband and I, we took over Thanksgiving. And she was super excited because she's always known that this food is so healing. And she's really, for the most part, changed the way she eats until she kind of falls off track. But we took over we took over Thanksgiving, and we were making sauteed spinach and kale, big salads, we had sweet potatoes. And my sister comes out and she was just like, oh, this is not. So she took my grandfather to Marie Callender's, and they brought back, like, she was like, I'm going to go buy Thanksgiving over here. She brought back gravy and mashed potatoes and macaroni and cheese. You know, and because she was like, I'm not having this Thanksgiving. I'm not doing this. I'm not letting you subject everyone to this healthy Thanksgiving. And it literally went in and sabotaged our entire affair. So that's how serious it can get sometimes.
Yes. And we are wired to belong. We're wired to belong. And so it takes a lot of strength to stand apart and make different choices.
It really is.
I think that's huge. I mean, gosh, it sounds like, how can we ever heal with all these huge stories, right?
Right. And like you said, I think that those deep grooves, right, that continue to get perpetuated. I think also in the state of belonging, when let's say we're dealing with a chronic autoimmune condition, maybe it's lupus or maybe it's endo, and we find a support group to support us. Sometimes it's as if we're stuck in that state, that there may be no way out of that as well. And there's a belonging that happens when we're in a group like that too.
Absolutely.
That can absolutely continue to perpetuate that illness. And I see that in support groups all over. And not to say that they're not helpful, but you can sometimes get stuck in that.
Yeah, people love to bond through adversity. You know, and these are things that are part of the human psyche and the human brain, the whole negativity bias of the brain. We are attracted to negative stuff, and we're attracted to others who share our pain. But then how do we elevate ourselves out of that pain when we have those bonds that are so powerful and serve a purpose up to a certain point.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So that's a really excellent point. And then there's just the whole fear of change and uncertainty, which I consider that to be a whole nother category of stories. Although these are all interrelate profoundly. It's just kind of my way of thinking through the kinds of stories that we tell ourselves that it can end up sabotaging our efforts to heal. But, it's human to fear change. It's human to fear an unknown future, an unknown outcome. What's going to happen if we become well? I mean, that's a literal fear that people have. If I become well, what do I lose? Will people still love me? Will my friends still want to be with me? Will my other sick friends still want to be my friends? I mean, this is stuff that really comes up frequently.
Absolutely. I call those false positives. That the things that we anchor in. How is this story serving you? How is it that it's serving you in the world? And an example, which is not a healing example, but an example too, is like, let's say I'm just not boyfriend material. I'm not husband material. And what does that allow for you? Well, you don't, you can just stay at home in your pajamas all the time. You don't have to go out, it's kind of, in a way, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it also allows you the excuse of not really going out and being your full self for somebody.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right. Yes. And then the last one I talk about is the story of not having enough time, because that's so pervasive, right?
It's my story. It is pervasive in me.
Absolutely. But it's a choice, right? If we don't have enough time, it's not that we don't have enough time. It's just that we've created different priorities. So it's always an excuse.
Yes.
Right. Now we can establish our priorities, and maybe, there's some things that we've been advised to do, or we have felt that would be good contributions to our healing path.
It's definitely something I've worked on for many, many years. And I'm really mindful when I say it, oh, I'm really busy right now, or I got so much going on right now. When I look at my day as a whole, like today I had a 45-minute morning ritual, and I think about how much health is ingrained into my life every single day. And it's probably a quarter of my day.
Yeah.
Is my health routines. And because it is a priority. It's a priority because I want to live in a thriving, abundant, healing body. I want to live a thriving, abundant, healing life. However, that particular story can play out in so many ways in our lives. And health being that easy thing. I mean, for me, it comes up for my readers and my listeners all the time, is like, I don't have time to make healthy dinners. I don't have time to go to get my massages. I don't have time to take care of me. It's just something that comes up it's the easiest excuse to come up with.
Yes, it is. It is. And like you say, we just have to be mindful of it. And each day we're making a new set of choices. And, to some extent, it's a luxury to be able to take a quarter of a day and focus it on self-care. I do the same thing. And I realize that it's a luxury in that I don't have to work in a factory for 40 to 50 hours every week. I'm very privileged. I have work I love. I have a comfortable life, and I get to manage myself in a way that keeps me really, really well. But there are always going to be inroads to what we want to achieve, and they can be small. And sometimes it's the small things really that pack the biggest punch and can lead to the most, healing and freedom. You don't have to spend half to, a quarter to a third of your day with healing rituals. Not everybody needs to do that in order to receive great benefit from what they're able to do.
Absolutely. No, there are small choices that we can make every day that really can make a huge impact. And to me, some level of self-care, I think, is a non-negotiable. If we're constantly giving to everyone else and never, ever focusing on ourselves, I think that's what lands a lot of women in trouble in the first place. For me, that had happened, 10 years ago. And I was like, okay, I'm only 30. This can't keep happening to me. Like, what do I got to do to make the changes to really show up in my relationships, to show up in my community, to do the work that I know that I was put on earth to do? And that just meant taking a little bit more care of me. I got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition in 2018, and it was another wake up call. And I was like, okay. I see you. I see this. And since then, I've been even more mindful. And that's why I'm taking a little bit more time than I even used to, because I was like, okay, well, clearly I didn't take enough time, because I somehow landed an autoimmune condition in the middle of all that. And so it was just, you get cues from your body about what needs to be done.
Absolutely. Yeah. And some of us are called to do more. Yeah. We're more like the canaries in the coal mine, and it takes more care. I mean, I've always considered myself that way. I just require that much more care. But what I learned from it, I pass on to others.
I love the distinguishing of the 5 stories. I think that, as we're all listening to this show and listening to your wisdom, you're checking those. I don't know, I'm checking, that one comes up every now and again, or I'm still working through this one. How do we begin to cultivate a new healing story? Kind of owning the fact that we're maybe holding on to some of those other stories. What can we do in terms of evolving our brain, evolving that neuroplasticity to change up the tracks?
Right. Well, it's not hard. Yeah, I think this whole topic is very intimidating to people. They think, neuroplasticity, whoa, sciencey. This is going to be really hard. What I try to convey in the book is that it's as simple as just saying, from your exhaustion, your place of exhaustion and suffering, wherever it is you are, you just say yes. You start. That's where you start. Just say yes. Don't expect any more than that. And then, whatever you have the energy and capacity to do, take up a little baby step. Take a few little baby steps. Ask somebody for some help. Follow your internal wisdom about what to do next. But literally starting by saying yes is the most profound message that you can send to your brain and your being and to the universe, that you're ready.
And
Right?
that's a yes to healing. Like
A yes to healing.
I'm ready for healing. A yes to healing for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it really is that simple. It's that simple. It's not rocket science.
Dr. Karyn Shanks, could we make that like an affirmation every morning? Like we have a couple of affirmations, like I am healing, I am healthy, I am saying yes to a healthy body. Would it be kind of just that repetitive kind of repeating of just owning that yes moment for yourself?
I think that's part of it. I love affirmations. I love to have people pair affirmations with a feeling.
Yeah. Okay.
So that, because I feel like feelings really connect us to present time.
Yes.
We can start to get there with a present tense affirmation. I am healed. I receive healing. Something like that. But then conjure up an emotion that goes with it, and you can choose that. Love, joyousness, freedom, and I'll have people make a list of the emotions that they want to associate with their healing. Visualize the healing. I'll have people visualize what their healing life looks like, who's there, what does it look like? What does it sound like? Just kind of setting up the scene. And then what are the emotions associated with that healing life that you are imagining, and feel those. And then that really connects it into present time. And I think that's where the money is in terms of creating that neuroplasticity that we want, those new mind grooves. And then practice every day. Practice, practice, practice. If you have 2 minutes, you don't have to sit down for an hour in a formal meditation ceremony. If you have that time, that's great, but not everybody does. A few minutes. A couple deep breaths in the middle of the day with an affirmation and a feeling that you've perhaps written down on a note card and have handy. I really do believe it's as simple as that. But then the consistency and showing up, continuing to show up and show up and show up.
I really love the noting of the consistency.
Yes. And then also embracing what I am thinking is the 6th story. And when I write my book about stories, this will be the 6th story. That's the story of failure. Because failure is always a story. And failure is what people feel when they don't follow through on what they set out to do. They don't show up for that 5 minutes of repeating their affirmations and feeling their new life. They don't show up for whatever self-care they've committed to. And then that failure story stops them in their tracks. When failure is really about, what else do I need to learn about this? If this isn't working, clearly there's either something else to do, or I need to move in a different direction. I mean, it's really a guidepost, but we get into this mindset that we've screwed up, and it's a shameful experience when that's not what failure is at all. So I feel like that's also key to walking this path of healing, is realizing that when we screw up, it's really just, we're being shown a different way.
Yeah. I always say I'm either winning or I'm learning.
Right.
I'm winning or learning. Those are the 2 options.
Right. Exactly.
And there's always so much to gain from those moments, and I love, it's just really redefining what that means. Because we all do so many people struggle with a fear of failure, especially in their health journey, and what that may look like. And I love that you address that head on, and how we can actually transform that and look at that in a different way.
Yeah, it's vital. Yes, it's vital, because we're all going to fail. We have to. I like to think of it as, it's the genius of the universe showing us exactly where we need to go as our unique beings, exactly where we need to go. We do one person's food plan and can't follow through on it, can't do it. Well, it's not the right time, or it's not the right food plan. Wow, what incredible feedback is that? Now we get to move on to the next idea. you
I
know?
agree. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about in just the evolution of my nutritional journey, in discovering that you got to find a unique path for yourself. I've tried all kinds of things over the years, just
Sure.
figuring it out, and also being, an advocate for what that kind of nutrition journey could be about. But there was a lot of things that I have learned about my body that either just taught me it doesn't work versus does. And it's always been such a great learning experience, learning about what my body has assimilated to and what it's not willing to assimilate
Absolutely.
to.
Absolutely. Yeah. The thing though is that, and I work primarily with people with chronic complex illness, often really sick people, people who've been, I would say, abused by the conventional medical system, abandoned, and they're suffering. And so suffering people tend not to be as resilient as you and I. And so they need to be reminded over and over and over again about these stories that they brought with them from that are part of the baggage of having been through the ringer and a part of suffering. They need to be reminded a lot about the value of failure and help them redefine what it actually is.
That
You
makes so
know?
much sense. Absolutely. Well, when you're stuck in that mode where nothing is working and you feel like you've been in a failed system, doctors not listening to you, or if they've sent you
Right.
down the wrong path and you felt dismissed and you felt put to the wayside, it breaks my heart to see how often women have been put through the ringer of the system and they're about to give up because they don't know what else to do. And yeah, having a picture of what it could look like to be in a healthier state once again.
That's right.
Karyn, when you're working with people, do you ever have them write out what it would look like for them, in that to imagine themselves in that healing state and kind of write out in detail what that life would look like? Would that ever be a part of an exercise that you would have?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Many people come in with that. It's really easy for them. They know exactly where they want to go. They can tell me their goals. It's very clear. They have a very vivid picture of and feeling of where it is they want to go. Other people don't. And part of it is, I think, been just sort of beaten out of them. It's just drained from their beings. They can't see it. They just know suffering and they know dead ends, and they know failures. And absolutely, I will push them to sit down. I'll have them do it right in front of me if we have to, because we can't start our work until this door opens, until they open the door to their healing. And I think that can be a very powerful way. Writing, I think, can be a very powerful way to do that.
I know some people, everyone aligns with different kind of modalities in which to create. Sometimes it is like literally closing our eyes in a meditative state and
Yes.
visualizing
Yes.
even our organ systems and how beautifully
Yeah.
they're functioning, maybe our mitochondria and how beautifully they're functioning. They're just
Yes.
cranking energy for us in an efficient
Yes.
way. Or it's just imagining the life that we have with our family and how we're feeling. Maybe
Right.
maybe we're J-Lo on the halftime show at
Yeah.
15 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
just imagining what that would look like. I know my mom, when she was in her late 40s, had never run a real race and like a real run. And, she imagined herself, she was really struggling with menopause and she was struggling with a lot of symptoms. And as she started to turn the corner in that, she really imagined something bigger. She's like, I can see myself running these races. I can see myself being strong enough, fast enough, agile enough to do it. And she's now ran, I think, well over 75 races since
That's
then.
awesome. Yeah,
And
that's
she
awesome.
just ran one the other day and she sent us a picture. She's like, no filter. She looks gorgeous. This is post race. It's amazing. I was like, look at you with your little J-Lo look,
Yeah.
running your half marathon. And it just, she kind of envisioned that and then it became who she was. I love to paint that picture of what's possible when we can see ourselves in it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's easier for some people than
It's
others.
true. Absolutely. Absolutely. So true. Absolutely. Yeah. I remember when I was diagnosed with my autoimmune condition and it really took me aback. I was surprised. I was like, oh my gosh, as a women's hormone practitioner, this was
Right.
definitely, I didn't see this coming. And
Yeah.
I remember sitting in with it and, and just really imagining what it would feel like to have, to really, my body is working for me. It is fully functional. And, what it looked like for my immune system to be just within ease and grace and not hyperactive and firing the way that it was. And once I saw it, I could feel it, I could envision it. I started doing
Yes.
the action steps to get there. And I've been in remission for 9 months, completely in Hashimoto's remission, and feel phenomenal. But, in that first couple of months, it's a blow to the system to think, all those beliefs come back up, like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Your mind is racing with, oh my gosh, have I failed myself? And having to step outside of that, knowing that isn't serving, because I definitely wasn't feeling better in those moments and in those feelings, and just kind of trying to imagine, like, okay, like, what does it look like to feel in this other state? And you're absolutely right. Like, it's one thing, to be empowered with this information and kind of understand the possibility of transformation in your mind, and then what that creates for you physically. And it's a very different scenario when someone has been told and told and told and told that they're simply going to have to live with this for the rest of their life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think I really like to have people work with the idea that they're not broken. If you're diagnosed with Hashimoto's, or you're diagnosed with, and I think especially with autoimmune disorders, people have this image of they're being attacked by their own body. And I try to get them to work with how they're not broken. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do under the circumstances that it's in. And it's our job to figure out what are those sets of circumstances that have led to this, what's going on today. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And that's so empowering to know, because people really feel like, they're just broken. And it's not their illness isn't a meaningful outcome of a collision between their genetics and the environment, which is how I look at illness as in functional medicine. That's how we look at what illness is all about. Therefore, we can figure it out.
Yes, absolutely.
We have the power to figure that out and to change that.
Well, I just want to say, this was such a powerful conversation, and I think it opens the door to that intangible path that can really lead us towards true healing. Easier said than done, and I recognize that, and in living that every single day, recognize it as well. I know that your book does such a marvelous job at mapping out a real pathway for us. If someone's taking that step, if you're taking that step, you're listening right now and you're saying, you know what? Yes, I want this. This feels right. I connect to what Dr. Karyn is saying. Where is the book? And tell us a little bit about what are some of the other attributes of this book that you bring to the table?
Over the years, I was sort of pushed and coerced by my clients to create a guidebook that allowed them to have a view, like a bird's eye view of the terrain of their healing. What are all these pieces? What are all the key aspects of our humanness and how our bodies function that plays into our well-being and our energy and our ability to be well? And, there are many very excellent books out there on healing, and usually they're very niched. They address one small aspect of healing. And it's so important for people, especially when there's a lot going on, to see the whole picture, and then to feel supported and learning to trust their intuitive wisdom about what they personally need, so that they can jump in to their personal hot spots and get to work. So I developed that roadmap. I call it the 9 domains of healing. I have the book is filled with exercises and meditations and permission slips, because I feel like we need that kind of support no matter what aspect of our healing we're working on. And I tried to make it very approachable and accessible, and like a true handbook that you can open and you can scribble all over the margins and really put some practical tools to use in your everyday life. It's called Heal, a 9-stage roadmap to recover energy, reverse chronic illness, and claim the potential of a vibrant new you.
I love it. Thank you.
And it's available on Amazon. Yes. People can read more about it on my website, KarynShanksMD.com/heal. Or that you can go to Amazon and take a look at my book page, Karyn Shanks, MD, Heal.
Well, we are going to have it inside the show notes for this episode, so we can link directly not only to the site, but also to Amazon directly. So if you are ready to jump in and literally get that full picture, you're ready to start to visualize and then start to create health and wellness, this is the book to do it. Dr. Karyn Shanks, thank you so much for coming onto the show and sharing your incredible wisdom.
Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it. Thank you.